It is 150,000, around that figure in the United States. Here's the number of people in hospital right now. That's setting a new record, almost 70,000, more than when the virus first hit in the spring. Hospitalizations are on a sharp upward curve as new cases climb higher in Canadian border states like Michigan, North Dakota, and Washington, places where tighter restrictions are now in place. The surge is also pushing the U.S. to another milestone, more than 11 million cases since the pandemic began. And in a development that highlights the depth of the crisis, more than 1 million of those cases emerged in just the last week. So that rapid spread has President-elect Joe Biden's top advisors sounding the alarm. One of those, his incoming White House chief of staff, warning the same roadblocks Donald Trump is putting in the way of the transition is keeping them from working with the top infectious disease experts on the White House task force, trying to come up with their new strategy. Senior Washington editor Lindsay Duncombe is back with us, and we're so happy to see you, Lindsay, after a few months away, and particularly at these times, so many important stories. But let's talk about transition and the stalling, and what does it mean to Biden's response to the pandemic?
Well, the reality for many Americans right across the country is that they're getting conflicting information, Heather. They're hearing one thing from state governments, a different thing from the federal government, a different thing from the president. Consider the border state that you mentioned, Michigan, where the governor, Gretchen Whitmer, who has long been a target, someone who has been criticized by Donald Trump and by his supporters, has put in new restrictions to deal with a coronavirus spike that is 4 times greater than what that state saw back at the peak in April. And what she's done is she has said that high schools and colleges have to move to remote learning. There will only be outdoor dining, no indoor dining, or takeout, no indoor dining. And when gyms can only be open for individuals, not for classes. Well, the president's top medical advisor tweeted this. He said, the only way this stops is if people rise up. You get what you accept. #freedom matters. And then he had to scale that back in another tweet saying that he was not meaning to incite violence. So this is the kind of conflicting misinformation that people are getting, and all of it is exacerbated by the fact that the Biden team, as you mentioned, does not have access to the kinds of information about a vaccine, about virus transmission that it would normally have if this were anything resembling a normal transition. And this is something that Dr. Anthony Fauci addressed over the weekend, because of course he's worked with 6 different presidents. That's a lot of transitions. And here's what he said about how important that information is during a transition in a health crisis.
It is very clear that that transition process that we go through, that time, the period of measured in several weeks to months, is really important in a smooth handing over of the information, as well as it's almost like passing a baton in a race. You don't want to stop and then give it to somebody. You want to just essentially keep going. And that's what transition is. So it certainly would make things more smoothly if we could do that.
And what's really been interesting about watching these warnings in the United States, Heather, is that some of the news reports have had reference to Canada, saying that it was the Thanksgiving holiday in Canada that was part of the contributing factor to the spike that Canada is seeing right now. And of course, this is all coming with American Thanksgiving, where people generally gather, where there's lots and lots of travel. That's happening next week.
Lindsay, it looks like Donald Trump is not going to remove any roadblocks to this transition. So what is ahead then this week for Joe Biden and his team?
Watch his economic speech today, because one of the things that Joe Biden did even in the campaign was say that the economy and an economic recovery goes hand in hand with stopping the spread of the virus. That's in contrast to what we're hearing from Republicans, Heather, who consistently place this as an either-or scenario. So now that Joe Biden is vice president-elect, he will be putting this message forward about recovery recovery and stopping the virus at the same time. And the problem for Biden is he's having to deliver that message at the same time as the counter-programming from the Oval Office continues to be one of misinformation and this refusal to concede.